Cub Pilot on the Mississippi by Mark Twain. When I was a boy, there was but one permanent ambition among my comrades in our village on the west bank of the Mississippi River. That was to be a steamboatman. We had transient ambitions of other sorts, but they were only transient. When a circus came and went, it left us all burning to become clowns. The first minstrel show that came to our section left us all suffering to try that kind of life. Now and then we had a hope that if we lived and were good, God would permit us to be pirates. These ambitions faded out, each in its turn, but the ambition to be a steamboatman always remained. I first wanted to be a cabin boy so that I could come out with a white apron on and shake a tablecloth over the side, where all my old comrades could see me. Later I thought I would rather be the deckhand who stood at the end of the stage plank with a coil of rope in his hand, because he was particularly conspicuous. Boy after boy managed to get on the river. The minister's son became an engineer. The doctor's and the postmaster's sons became mud clerks. The wholesale liquor dealer's son became a barkeeper on a boat. 4 sons of the chief merchant and 2 sons of the county judge became pilots. Pilot was the grandest position of all. The pilot, even in those days of trivial wages, had a princely salary from $150 to $250 a month and no board to pay. 2 months of his wages would make a preacher's salary for a year. Now some of us were left disconsolate. We could not get on the river. At least our parents would not let us. So by and by I ran away. I said I never would come home again till I was a pilot and could come in glory. During the 2 or 2.5 years of my apprenticeship, I served under many kinds of pilots and had experience of many kinds of steamboatmen and many varieties of steamboats. I am to this day profiting somewhat by that experience. For in that brief, sharp schooling, I got personally and familiarly acquainted with about all the different types of human nature that are to be found in fiction, biography, or history. The figure that comes before me oftenest out of the shadows of that vanished time is that of Brown of the steamer Pennsylvania, the man referred to in a former chapter whose memory was so good and tiresome. He was middle-aged, long, slim, bony, smooth-shaven, horse-faced, ignorant, stingy, malicious, snarling, fault-hunting, moat-magnifying tyrant. I early got in the habit of coming on watch with dread at my heart. No matter how good a time I might have been having with the off-watch below, and no matter how high my spirits might be when I started aloft, my soul became lead in my body the moment I approached the pilot house. I still remember the first time I ever entered the presence of that man. The boat had backed out from St. Louis and was straightening down. I ascended to the pilot house in high feather, very proud to be semi-officially a member of the executive family of so fast and famous a boat. Brown was at the wheel. I paused in the middle of the room, all fixed to make my bow, but Brown did not look around. I thought he took a furtive glance at me out of the corner of his eye, but as not even this notice was repeated, I judged I had been mistaken. By this time he was picking his way among some dangerous breaks abreast the wood yards. Therefore it would not be proper to interrupt him, so I stepped softly to the high bench and took a seat. There was silence for 10 minutes, then my new boss turned and inspected me deliberately and painstakingly from head to heel for about, as it seemed to me, a quarter of an hour. After which he removed his countenance, and I saw it no more for some seconds. Then it came around once more, and this question greeted me. "Are you Horace Bixby's cub?" "Yes, sir." After this there was a pause, and then another inspection, and then, "What's your name?" I told him. He repeated it after me. It was probably the only thing he ever forgot, for although I was with him for many months, he never addressed himself to me in any other way than "Here!" and then when his command was followed. "Where was you born?" "In Florida, Missouri." A pause. "Darn sight better stayed there." By means of a dozen or so pretty direct questions, he pumped my family history out of me. The leads were going down now in the first crossing. This interrupted the inquest. It must have been all of 15 minutes. 15 minutes of dull, homesick silence before that long horse face swung round upon me again. And then what a change! It was as red as fire and every muscle in it was working. Now came this shriek. "Here! You gonna sit there all day?" I lit in the middle of the floor, shot there by the electric suddenness of the surprise. As soon as I could get my voice, I said apologetically, I've had no orders, sir. You've had no orders? My, what a fine bird we are. We must have orders. Our father was a gentleman, owned slaves, and we've been to school. Yes, we are a gentleman too, and got to have orders. Orders, is it? Orders is what you want. Dod-darn my skin, I'll learn you to swell yourself up and blow around here about your dod-darned orders. Go away from the wheel. I had approached it without knowing it. I moved back a step or two and stood as in a dream, all my senses stupefied by this frantic assault. What are you standing there for? Take that ice pitcher down to the Texas tender. Come, move along, and don't you be all day about it. The moment I got back to the pilot house, Brown said, Here! What you doing down there all this time? I couldn't find the Texas tender. I had to go all the way to the pantry. Darn likely story, filled the stove. I proceeded to do so, and he watched me like a cat. Presently he shouted, Put down that shovel. Deadest numbskull I ever saw. Ain't even got sense enough to load up a stove. All through the watch this sort of thing went on. Yes, and the subsequent watches were much like it. During a stretch of months, as I have said, I'd soon got the habit of coming on duty with dread. The moment I was in the presence, even in the darkest night, I could feel those yellow eyes upon me and knew their owner was watching for a pretext to spit out some venom on me. Preliminarily, he would say, Here, take the wheel. 2 minutes later, Where in the nation are you going to? Pull her down, pull her down. After another moment, Say, you gonna hold her all day? Let her go. Meet her, meet her. Then he would jump from the bench, snatch the wheel from me, and meet her himself, pouring out wrath upon me all the time. George Ritchie was the other pilot's cub. He was having a good time now, for his boss, George Ealer, was as kind-hearted as Brown wasn't. Ritchie had steeled for Brown the season before. Consequently, he knew exactly how to entertain himself and plague me, all by the one operation. Whenever I took the wheel for a moment on Ealer's watch, Ritchie would sit back on the bench and play Brown, with continual ejaculations of Snatcher! Snatcher! Darndest mud-cat I ever saw! Here, where are you going now? Gonna run over that snag! Pull her down! Don't you hear me? Pull her down! There she goes, just as I expected! I told you not to cramp the reef! Go away from the wheel! So I always had a rough time of it, no matter whose watch it was, and sometimes it seemed to me Ritchie's good-natured badgering was pretty nearly as aggravating as Brown's dead earnest nagging. I often wanted to kill Brown, but this would not answer. A cub had to take everything his boss gave in the way of vigorous comment and criticism, and we all believed there was a United States law making it a penitentiary offense to strike or threaten a pilot who was on duty. 2 trips later, I got into serious trouble. Brown was steering, I was pulling down. My younger brother appeared on the hurricane deck and shouted to Brown to stop at some landing or other a mile or so below. Brown gave no intimation he had heard anything, but that was his way. He never condescended to take notice of an underclerk. The wind was blowing, Brown was deaf, although he always pretended he wasn't, and I very much doubted if he had heard the order. If I had 2 heads, I would have spoken, but as I had only one, it seemed judicious to take care of it, so I kept still. Presently, sure enough, we went sailing by that plantation. Captain Kleinfelter appeared on the deck and said, Let her come around, sir. Let her come around. Didn't Henry tell you to land here? No, sir. I set him up to do it. He didn't come up, and that's all the good it done, the dod-darn fool. He never said anything. Didn't you hear him? Asked the captain of me. Of course, I didn't want to be mixed up in this business, but there was no way to avoid it. So I said, Yes, sir. I knew what Brown's next remark would be before he uttered it. It was, Shut your mouth. You never heard anything of the kind. I closed my mouth according to instructions. An hour later, Henry entered the pilot house, unaware of what had been going on. He was a thoroughly inoffensive boy, and I was sorry to see him come, for I knew Brown would have no pity on him. Brown began straight away. Here, why didn't you tell me we'd got to land at that plantation? I did tell you, Mr. Brown. It's a lie. I said, You lie yourself. He did tell you. Brown glared at me in unaffected surprise. For as much as a moment he was entirely speechless. Then he shouted to me, I'll attend to your case in half a minute. And then to Henry, And you leave the pilot house. Out with you. It was pilot law and must be obeyed. The boy started out and even had his foot on the upper step outside the door when Brown, with a sudden access of fury, picked up a 10-pound lump of coal and sprang after him. but I was between with a heavy stool, and I hit Brown a good honest blow which stretched him out. I had committed the crime of crimes. I had lifted my hand against a pilot on duty. I supposed I was booked for the penitentiary sure, and couldn't be booked any surer if I went on and squared my long account with this person while I had the chance. Consequently, I struck him and pounded him with my fists a considerable time. I do not know how long. The pleasure of it probably made it seem longer than it really was. But in the end he struggled free and jumped up and sprang to the wheel. A very natural solicitude, for all this time here was the steamboat tearing down the river at the rate of 15 miles an hour and nobody at the helm. However, Eagle Bend was 2 miles wide at this bank-full stage and correspondingly long and deep, and the boat was steering herself straight down the middle and taking no chances. Still, that was only luck. A body might have found her charging into the woods. Perceiving at a glance that the Pennsylvania was in no danger, Brown gathered up the big spyglass, war club fashion, and ordered me out of the pilot house with no more than bluster. But I was not afraid of him now, so instead of going I tarried, and criticized his grammar. I reformed his ferocious speeches for him, and put them into good English, calling his attention to the advantage of pure English over the dialect of the Pennsylvanian collieries whence he was extracted. He could have done his part to admiration and crossfire of mere vituperation, of course, but he was not equipped for this species of controversy. So he presently laid aside his glass and took the wheel, muttering and shaking his head, and I retired to the bench. The racket had brought everybody to the hurricane deck, and I trembled when I saw the old captain looking up from the midst of the crowd. I said to myself, now I am done for although as a rule he was a fatherly and indulgent toward the boat family, and so patient of minor shortcomings, he could be stern enough when the fault was worth it. I tried to imagine what he would do to a cub pilot who'd been guilty of such a crime as mine, committed on a boat guard deep, with costly freight and alive with passengers. Our watch was nearly ended. I thought I would go and hide somewhere till I got a chance to slide ashore. So I slipped out of the pilot house and down the steps and around to the Texas door, and was in the act of gliding within when the captain confronted me. I dropped my head and he stood over me in silence for a moment or two, and then said impressively, "Follow me." I dropped into his wake. He led the way to his parlor in the forward end of the Texas. We were alone now. He closed the after door, then moved slowly to the forward one and closed that. He sat down. I stood before him. He looked at me some little time, and then he said, "So you've been fighting Mr. Brown?" I answered meekly, "Yes, sir." "Do you know that that's a very serious matter?" "Yes, sir." "Are you aware that this boat was plowing down the river fully 5 minutes with no one at the wheel?" "Yes, sir." "Did you strike him first?" "Yes, sir." "With what?" "A stool, sir." "Hard?" "Middling, sir." "Did it knock him down?" He fell, sir." "Did you follow it up? Did you do anything further?" "Yes, sir." "What did you do?" "Pounded him, sir." "Pounded him?" "Yes, sir." "Did you pound him much, that is, severely?" "One might call it that, sir, maybe." "Well, I'm deuced glad of it. Harkee, never mention that I said that. You've been guilty of a great crime, and don't you ever be guilty of it again on this boat. But lay for him ashore. Give him a good sound thrashing, do you hear? I'll pay the expenses. Now go and mind you, not a word of this to anyone. Clear out with you. You've been guilty of a great crime, you whelp." I slid out, happy with the sense of a close shave and a mighty deliverance, and I heard him laughing to himself and slapping his fat thigh after I had closed his door. When Brown came off watch, he went straight to the captain, who was talking with some passengers on the boiler deck, and demanded that I be put ashore in New Orleans, and added, "I'll never turn a wheel on this boat again while that cub stays." The captain said, "But he needn't come round when you were on watch, Mr. Brown." "I won't even stay on the same boat with him. One of us has got to go ashore." "Very well," said the captain. "Let it be yourself," and resumed his talk with the passengers.